the world. I think it's time to begin the next session. My name is Daniel Galadza. I'm professor of Byzantine liturgy at the Pontifical Oriental Institute, and it is my pleasure to introduce Giulia Rossetto and her book, Greek Palimpsests at Sinai, St. Catherine's Monastery, Sinai, 3 Euchologia as case studies. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the organizers of the second online Edinburgh Byzantine Book Festival and remind everyone to write their questions in the chat. So, Giulia Rossetto is a postdoctoral researcher at the Austrian Academy of Sciences, and I might add that starting this coming Wednesday, she begins her position at the Byzantine Studies Department of the University of Vienna as assistant professor, or in German, Universitätsassistentin. So congratulations on that new appointment, Giulia. Her research focuses on the study of Byzantine manuscripts as archaeological objects, the mobility of books, and the people who carry them, with a special interest in the movement of Greek manuscripts in various regions around the Mediterranean, Italy, Egypt, Palestine, and Syria, to mention just a few. And her affiliation with the Sinai Palimpsests project has allowed her to work extensively on Greek palimpsests of the Monastery of St. Catherine on Mount Sinai. While part of the texts she works on are liturgical in nature, and personally I find those the most interesting, but there are many other texts in palimpsests that go beyond the realm of Christian worship, including Orphic poems, and you can read about some of her discoveries in the Zeitschrift für Papyrologie und Epigraphik last year. A publication appeared there last year. Since December 2020, she is the principal investigator of the project Priests, Books, and the Library at St. Catherine's Sinai, funded by the Austrian Research Fund, or the FAF. And there's a conference coming up, and she has a call for papers out. So if you're interested, you can find more information on that on the website. Her first monograph, which we are discussing today, Greek Palimpsests at St. Catherine's Monastery, Sinai, 3 Euchologia as case studies, stems from her work with the Vienna Euchologia project and the Sinai Palimpsest project as her doctoral thesis. The book is hot off the press, published exactly 33 days ago, so many people have not even seen it in print yet, and it's from the Austrian Academy of Sciences Press. Now, the book unites many different worlds, not just the understudied undertexts of manuscripts with their scriptio superior, but it connects modern scientific technology with the study of ancient religious texts. Codicological investigation brings together paleography and liturgical studies in a way that's not been done before. And the foreword from Father Justin from the Library of Mount Sinai also unites the life of the monastery of St. Catherine on the God-trodden mountain of Sinai today with the history of worship there since the 4th century, preserved in the texts of the Euchologia in this library. So it's my pleasure to welcome Giulia and to hear about her book.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for your very kind words of introduction. And I have to say that I could see the book for the first time in press yesterday, so it's also very new for me. And let me share my screen and start with the presentation. Can you see it? Yes, great. One moment. Yeah, great. So the library of the Monastery of St. Catherine in the Sinai Desert not only holds one of the oldest collections of Greek manuscripts in the world, but it is also a very rich repository of palimpsests. It preserves over 170 rewritten manuscripts in 11 different languages. And during the Sinai Palimpsest project of EMEL, 74 of these 170 palimpsests were photographed with multispectral imaging technique and individually examined by a number of scholars. The greatest part of these manuscripts has liturgical or theological content, and among these we find a relevant number of Euchologia, that is Byzantine prayer books. The idea of combining the study of palimpsests with that of the Byzantine prayer books preserved in the Sinai originated from my involvement with 2 research projects, the already mentioned Sinai Palimpsest project and the Vienna Euchologia project. I first came into contact with both projects in the year 2014, while I was in Vienna on an Erasmus exchange writing my master's thesis. My curiosity was soon awakened. Why were so many prayer books written on reused parchment? What kinds of texts lay erased underneath the Euchologia? Why were they discarded? And where and when did it happen? I tried to answer to these questions in my dissertation, which I defended at the end of 2019, and that later became the book we are discussing today. And the resulting monograph, Greek Palimpsests at St. Catherine's Monastery, you can see the cover on the slide, is arranged in 6 chapters. So the first 2 chapters deal with the Greek palimpsests of St. Catherine. In the first chapter, I outlined the state of research, then discussed the evolution in techniques used for reading palimpsest manuscripts, from reagents to multispectral imaging, and deal with past and present projects connected to Greek palimpsests. I then move on to address more specifically the Sinai palimpsest project and its novelties. The second chapter offers a preliminary inventory of the Greek palimpsests of St. Catherine. In a checklist, I indicate all Greek palimpsests I have so far identified, but then focus with greater detail on those which were photographed with multispectral imaging during the project. And we are talking of 32 manuscripts, in which 92 Greek scriptiones inferiores, or undertexts, were identified. And for this, I analyzed the pattern of parchment reuse, that is how the parchment folia were discarded and later reused, the relationship between the language used at Scriptio Superior and the language of the Scriptio Inferior, script style, date, place of origin, and content. Afterwards, I list a number of newly identified membra disecta Sinaitica, namely fragments of manuscripts that originally belonged to one and the same codex, but are now scattered among the Sinai collections or also in other libraries around the world. And each of them carries now an independent shelf mark. And here you can see one example of one of the membra disecta of one of the 3 Euchologia, that is one of my case studies. This is one of the membra disecta of Sinai Greek 960, preserving the very beginning of the original manuscript. And you can see the title page in the slide. You can probably read the title Euchologium sin Theo. And this is now found in manuscript Sinai Greek New Finds M22. The organization of each description is as follows. First, the Scriptio Superior, so the Euchologion, is analyzed under several headings: codicology, paleography, decoration, and content. Next comes the analysis of the Scriptiones Inferiores. And here, codicological and paleographical characteristics of each recovered text are set out, with the aim of providing a reconstruction of the original manuscript. The erased texts are then transcribed and commented on for the first time. Each of these descriptive chapters concludes with a summary of the most significant features emerging from each investigation. A particular challenge in this work has been the choice of English terminology. For the names of specific kinds of script, I have preferred to keep the original names, for example, Perlschrift. But otherwise, I have used English terms in order to describe, for example, the form of the letters or the structure and condition of a manuscript. And for specific palimpsest-related termini, I largely employ both first use for the Sinai Palimpsest project. And one example is the use of the words overtext and undertext as a variation for scriptio superior and scriptio inferior. On the basis of this detailed analysis, a few general observations emerge, which may be summarized as follows. Manifold texts, some previously unknown, have been recovered and identified. A few examples. An unknown canon on Saint Nicholas, a liturgical typicon from southern Italy and specifically from Salento, displaying the influence of the Sabaite typicon and of the typicon of Nikon of the Black Mountain, or a fragment from an ancient Paraclitic key written in upright pointed majuscule. This prompts speculation as to why such texts were discarded, and as I could understand, this was primarily due to physical degradation, illegible writing, or outdated content. The investigation of the three Sinai Euchologia and their Disiecta Membra written on reused parchment is a contribution to the history of the Sinai collection, with particular relevance to research on Euchologia and Palimpsests. While in the past there have been studies of individual palimpsest manuscripts, I have attempted here to contextualize these three examples within the context both of the library collection and its palimpsests, underlining especially the fact that manuscripts reach the monasteries from very different and distant places, such as far southern Italy. In this term, this monograph marks the starting point of a broader approach to be directed both at collections of Euchologia and the palimpsests preserved at St. Catherine's. In relation to the Euchologia specifically, these studies illuminate the potential of codicological and paleographical research in conjunction with a thorough analysis of content. A comprehensive study of all Sinai Euchologia, both in the old and new collection, is highly desirable, providing scope for a level of analysis that goes beyond individual studies of specific famous manuscripts, as has mostly been ventured to date. And this is what I'm trying to do in my current project funded by the Austrian Science Fund, called Priests, Books, and the Library of St. Catherine's, in which I am shedding light on the origin of the Sinai prayer books and the manner in which they entered the Sinai collection. And as far as the palimpsests are concerned, it would seem very worthwhile to continue with detailed studies of individual palimpsests. It is to be hoped that a second phase of the Sinai Palimpsest project will allow for the remaining palimpsests in the collection to undergo multispectral imaging and be made accessible for in-depth study. But this investigation also indicates the benefits of more extensive studies, taking into consideration the entire collection of palimpsests to gain comprehensive insights into the practices of palimpsestation in different regions and at different times. Hence, this study should be considered the starting point for further studies of the liturgical manuscripts and of the palimpsests at St. Catherine's and in other libraries. I thank you for your attention.